Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, Lore and Frey, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. So I've been talking a lot about Fire Emblem on forums and stuff like that. I have found the reception to Fire Emblem Engage rather interesting because this is a game that has not sold as well as Three Houses for a myriad of reasons. And honestly, I don't think anyone really cares. I think this was a title that just kind of, wanted to do something a little bit different. It tried and it didn't really succeed, honestly. Like there are things like to like about Engage. I really liked it, but when all is said and done, it's not my favorite title in the series by a long shot. Like I much preferred Three Houses. I much preferred Echoes. I much preferred like Awakening. I would say like the only Fire Emblem game I like it more than in recent years is Fates, and that's because Fates is like a steaming pile of garbage. Like I would never put Engage on the same level as Fates. So I think we're kind of in that point where Intelligent Systems is really willing to like think outside the box with Fire Emblem and stuff like that, doing really weird out there things. And I think honestly, like the Three Houses formula is probably the better bet, like darker, more mature stories with character-driven aspects to it, because I don't think most fans play these games for the strategy gameplay, right? That's something that's been talked about for a while now, but I think with like new Fire Emblem, the focus is on like the characters and their interesting places in the world and like utilizing them to the best of their abilities. It's very much like Persona in that respect, and I don't really have a problem with that. In fact, I would say like Fire Emblem does it better than Persona. It does it better than any other game in the series, but it's led to this idea among the community that there are better strategy RPGs on other platforms, right? They never bring up like Nintendo alternatives like Advance Wars. They always like saying like some like general term of just saying that like, oh, Fire Emblem, it's mid. There are so many better strategy RPGs out there. Well, okay, buddy. Here's the thing. What are they? How much are they selling, and when was the last time one came out? Because every time I see people talk about this, they're always talking about like Final Fantasy Tactics or like Valkyria Chronicles or like what have you, like stuff from like the mid 2000s to the 90s, right? There are lots of really good strategy RPGs out there, but none of them are as relevant or as mainstream or get as many releases as Fire Emblem does, right? Like I think for the longest time, much like how Pokemon is the world's biggest JRPG, Fire Emblem has been the world's biggest strategy RPG for about a decade now, and nobody wants to admit that it is excelling in this genre. That is the biggest entry in this subgenre. Like, sure, there are bigger RPGs out there. Pokemon is bigger than it, for example, but like, there's no denying that in its specific niche of being like the anime-esque, like strategy RPG, like style, like that specific thing, that specific subgenre, that like Fire Emblem excels. Because like all the alternatives I see from people trying to say that Fire Emblem isn't that great, it's all just rationalizing. It's all just excuses. It's all like promoting stuff that really doesn't have all that much in common with Fire Emblem and trying to push it as like some viable alternative, right? When that's really not the truth. Like I've seen people try and tell me that like Shining Force is like way better than any Fire Emblem game. But like, I haven't played Shining Force. I'm sure it's great. Like it's actually one of the few Sega Genesis games I would really like to get into, but like that series has been dead since the 90s. Like there's nothing wrong with Shining Force. Like I don't have anything against it, but like to say it's better than Fire Emblem is just disingenuous, right? Like Fire Emblem succeeded and Shining Force died off. There's a reason for this, right? Like Nintendo succeeded where Sega failed. Like it's a pretty typical pattern here, and yet we still see a lot of people trying to downplay every major Fire Emblem game that comes out. And to a certain extent, I think that's happening with Engage. And I think a lot of the ammunition being fired at it right now actually does have a lot of basis in reality. Like, I don't disagree with people when they say that, like, the story is bland and that the characters aren't interesting. But, like, the strategy RPG like aspect is way better than Three Houses, right? Like there are things that are way better here. Like I love the animations. I love the whole like feeling of being like the divine savior, like saving these countries from war. I like a lot of the character designs. Panette might be one of my favorite Fire Emblem girls ever, right? Like I love Panette, right? But like people are exaggerating this game's problems in order to push this narrative that like, oh, is Fire Emblem on the way out? You know, it can keep competing. Like, what about all these other games? When really there aren't really any other games like it. Like, name one Fire Emblem like game that has been adequately compared to Fire Emblem. Like right now, it really does feel like whenever this topic comes up of like strategy RPGs that are better than Fire Emblem, people always just default to talking about Final Fantasy Tactics, but that game came out in 97. Like, I'm sure Final Fantasy Tactics is great. Like, I've been playing Ogre Battle. I love Ogre Battle, but I would not say that Ogre Battle can replace Fire Emblem because although they're both strategy RPGs, they do very different things. They have very different tones. They really can't be compared at all. And again, like Ogre Battle is on like the top of my list of games franchises I really want to get into. So that's coming from someone who really enjoys Ogre Battle, right? Someone who's been playing like Ogre Battle Tactics on Switch, whenever I have time. Like, I want to like Ogre Battle. I want to play all these other strategy RPGs, but are they better than Fire Emblem? Like, the answer really is no. Like, I'm invested in Fire Emblem. I like what Intelligent Systems is doing. I like how creative they're getting with the brand. They're branching it out into other genres. Like Tokyo Mirage Sessions was awesome. We've been seeing some stellar remakes, stellar new titles. Edelgard von Hellsfrog is the single greatest character in all of video games, right? Like, glory to the Emperor. Like, I love so many aspects of Fire Emblem, so much in fact that I'm not really sure that like anything is going to be able to like take the crown from it for a long time. Like, I've seen no signs of it. Like, what game in this specific niche is going to take over Fire Emblem? And I do think at this point that like Fire Emblem can be considered among like, Mario, Zelda, Pokemon as being like the king of its genre. But for the longest time, much like those games, Mario was derided because, oh man, 2D platformers are dead. Don't you know it's all about like 3D RPGs now? Zelda was downplayed for a long time until like Breath of the Wild. Pokemon, Splatoon is being downplayed right now. Animal Crossing is only just now getting to the process of being considered like, the pinnacle of its specific genre, right? Like, people were blindsided by the success of Animal Crossing New Horizons. This is the typical pattern with every major Nintendo series is that, like, people downplay the success until it becomes, like, the biggest thing in the world, right? And then they just try to, like, write it off as being like, oh, I'm not interested in that. That's kind of what we're going through with Three Houses, right? Oh, with Fire Emblem right now, is that people are not wanting to admit that this is the biggest strategy RPG franchise on the planet.